بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أفضل المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه الطيبين الطاهرين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي وبعد. جزاكم الله خير for attending. It's my pleasure to be here with you. And this is part 2. And I don't know if it's going to take 8 times, 6, 7, But inshallah, like I'll try my best to make it interesting, and I'll try my best to make it balanced between events, lessons, and also spiritual meanings behind everything, inshallah. I would like again to start by reminding you of the title of this series. This is not about Salahuddeen Al-Ayubi as a superhero that emerged, saved the Muslims, and now we're waiting for another superhero to just emerge, get us all out of this. The name is a generation of Salahuddin. It's a whole generation. He's a representative of a generation. And the second thing, between knights and scholars. So we want to see the people that did the action, but we also want to see the minds behind them. Their teachers, the scholars, what did they teach? How did this generation, this group of Salahuddin, how did they appear? Who taught them to be as such? And the main take out of it is, yes, there is a part that, the izzah and the honor and our history, and there is a big part of that, but also the lessons. What did they do? So maybe we can learn, and maybe we can apply it to our own time. And maybe in a decade, 2 decades, like things change for them, things will change for us. A quick recap about last time. We said it's not fair to speak about Salahuddin without speaking the challenges and the time before him. Sometimes to understand the significance of someone is you have to understand the challenge he was facing. And Salahuddin had his biggest challenge was not the Crusades, as we saw last time. The state of the Muslim Ummah was really bad. And last time we spent some time discussing this, the arena, how things were before Salahuddin Al-Ayubi. And if you remember, we said one thing. The purpose of this was what? Do you guys remember? Why did we do that? One of the purposes was what? Hope. Because sometimes we look at our current reality and we say, I don't see a way out. Back in the day, it was worse, and there was a way out. So in a way, we're telling ourselves, look, this is not the first time things were such in a negative situation. It was bad before. We passed through dips like that, and we recovered. So like we recovered in the past, there is always hope that we can recover again. How did we recover in the past is so important, so we can learn. Maybe it helps us to recover again, inshallah. And that's the purpose. So as a summary of what we discussed last time, we discussed the arena, the area, right? And we said the Muslim Ummah was divided. And as a conclusion, I showed this slide. So basically, the arena was, there is 3 powers, right? The first, Egypt, and it was under the Ismaili dynasty, and we described in details a very deviant sect, right? Like very deviant in their creed. They're the ones that established Cairo. They established Al-Azhar to spread their creed, right? They were in Egypt. But before the Crusades, the Ismailis were weak. It wasn't as strong. And Egypt fell into an economical despair. Like basically people were eating cats and dogs. The economical situation was terrible. The country was not doing well, right? So the Ismailis still existed in Egypt, but it's a rich country, but the riches of Egypt was not going to the people, was going to the ruling class, right? Scholars are suffering because the Ismaili made it a point, you don't need the Quran, you don't need scholars, you have the Imam. So scholars are the enemy of the state, right? So that was really a big thing in Egypt, right? The only scholars they wanted is the scholars that would preach the Ismaili madhab, and they had Al-Azhar to back them up, right? So that's in Egypt. Baghdad, that's the center, is Iraq. That's the center of the Sunni Khilafah, right? You said it's the Abbasis, but the Khalifa is nothing, it's a puppet. And the real power is in the Seljuk Empire. And last time we spoke about one figure, and this again, very important name, Nizam al-Mulk, if you remember. And the reason we spoke about him, he did something that passed his time. It was not only his political strength and the armies, the schools that he established. He established something new schools with top-notch scholars, a lot of expenses, and scholarship for people to study. So ilm was starting to, get promoted again, right? So that is where Iraq is. Then we have the area of Sham, Jerusalem, right in between. And we said this was divided in 22 different nations. Every city is by itself. Aleppo, Damascus, Mosul, as we'll see today, right? So it's a complete, and those rulers are fighting with each other, right? And the cities fell into, again, a very dark era of time. This was the situation of Muslims in a nutshell before the Crusades. There was one more group, do you guys remember? The Assassins. A deviant sect from the Ismailis had a deviant sect called the Assassins. While they were not massive in number, their methodology was very tricky. They relied on what? Assassination. Remember we said that? And their method was what? That they would send their followers, and their followers would pretend for years to be like an imam, a priest in a church, an aesthetic person, a soldier, and they would fight, and you would think, I know this person for 20 years, but he's loyal to the assassins. And in the right time, if their leader decides to strike, he orders those assassins to kill his opponent. And that was the methodology the assassins used. So they strike fear in the heart of anybody that opposed them. Do not dare to speak, because you and your family and everybody else will not be safe from our strike, right? So those are the groups that existed before the Crusades. Go one more step. Yeah. And last time I also, and this is an interesting chart, again, I'm putting it for you. We have the line of events and the scholars. The reason I find this interesting, many of us hear names, Ibn al-Qayyim, Ibn Taymiyyah, right? Ibn al-Jawzi. You hear names like Ibn Asakir, Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, Imam al-Ghazali. Who's where? Who's before who? Who contributed to what? The line of history, the history of Islam, is standing on the shoulder of the scholars. And this is a big part of what we want to convey here. And literally it's true. If you speak about, for example, the Mongol invasion, which happened like in this period, like between 600 till 650, the greatest scholar that was present was Al-Izz ibn Abd al-Salam and Abu al-Hasan al-Shadili. And you find those in the battlefield, you find them pushing the leaders to fight the Mongols, right? Similarly, in the time of Salahuddin, we wanted to also know who were the scholars living then, right? This is why this chart is important. I extended it so for also you to know, we'll see later. Where is Ibn Taymiyyah? Where is Ibn al-Qayyim? Was he before Imam al-Ghazali or after, right? What time did he live in? What did he face? The writing, what they teach is affected by also the political reality they lived in, which is very important to know, right? So that's the purpose of this short. Go inshallah. Bismillah. So for our period of history, I divided it into 3 phases, right? And today, inshallah, I hope that we can hopefully get to phase 2. So the phase 1 we spoke about last time. Phase 1 is what? Before the Crusades, before the fall of Jerusalem, right? And we saw the events and how the nation is split. The biggest scholar that was present here was Imam al-Ghazali. And we'll speak a little bit more about him today, right? He's the biggest name that affected this area. Imam al-Ghazali's teaching led to a new group of scholars that followed his work, like Ibn al-Jawzi. For example, he wrote Ihya Ulumuddin. It's a famous book of Imam al-Ghazali. Ibn al-Jawzi wrote something called Minhaj al-Abidin, or Minhaj al-Qasidin, right? Which is what he took Imam al-Ghazali's book and said, well, wait, there is some weak hadith, let me adjust it, and he wrote another book. His student, Ibn Qudama al-Maqdisi, wrote something called Mukhtasar Minhaj al-Qasidin, the abbreviation of Minhaj al-Qasidin, right? Ibn Qudama al-Maqdisi, you'll see him with Salahuddin in the Battle of Hittin, right? Now, why am I saying this? For us, if I want to get access to, tell me what to study. Ihya Ulumuddin of Imam al-Ghazali is very heavy. A highly recommended book for our time is Mukhtasar Minhaj al-Qasidin by Ibn Qudama al-Maqdisi. Sheikh Omar Suleiman has a series about this book. One of the most beautiful series he ever did. You can find it from Al-Maghrib Institute. So if you really want to find the teachings of the scholars that lived in this time, I would highly recommend that one for you, right? The book is available in Arabic also if you're interested. Right. We'll speak more. So this is the first phase, right? And we said there was Nizam al-Mulk, and then he was assassinated by the assassins, and the Seljuk Empire broke, and we had this mess that Sham is like 22 cities, right? And this was the time when the Crusaders strike. So today, hopefully, we're going to be speaking about this period of time. I want you to notice, again, to learn. We want to learn today about 2 things. The Crusaders, their origin, who were they, what was their ideology, why they did what they did, how did the Muslims view them? Because in the West, sometimes they're portrayed as chivalrous, right? A knight. You will see, far from true. Completely different, right? When we see the history, we'll see something completely different, right? And then we want to see the Muslim response to them. Not only like, why was it good or bad? Why was it this way? What was the real disease? What was the problem? And that's exactly, I want you to notice something. Imam al-Ghazali lived in the time where Jerusalem fell, right? According to this. And I'm going to ask you one question. So he's a scholar, great scholar. He lived in the time where Muslims were defeated by the Crusaders and Jerusalem fell to the hands of the Crusades. Anybody who knows the writings of Imam al-Ghazali, I'm going to ask you one question. Did you see any chapter about jihad fi sabilillah? Any chapter about, did he, like, we need to fight? He's not doing this. Why was that? Very interesting question, right? Why was he really like not into this? The answer is no. As a matter of fact, it's the writings of Imam al-Ghazali today, I'm going to show you that led to Salahuddeen Al-Ayubi. What did he see? That's what we want to discuss today. Right? He chose a specific approach. The scholars of the time, how did they handle what the Muslims went through? They had a deeper eye. And that's what I want to show inshallah today. طيب, here, bismillah, let's go inshallah. So the Franks. So today we'll start with the first crusade that went against the Muslims. And as we describe the Muslim world, in parallel, what was going in Europe? So let's go ahead. So before I start, there is a principle I think it's extremely important to know. And this is by Ibn al-Qayyim. And it's a very spiritual concept. He says the following: "Tallah ma ada alayka al-adu illa ba'da an a'rad anka al-wali. فلا تظن أن الشيطان غلب ولكن الولي أعرض." He's saying the following statement. See, if you see that you're defeated, if you see Muslims are weak, if you see that we're such in a bad state, do not think that your enemy is more powerful and he just overpowered you. Your enemy did not overpower you except after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your protector, al-wali, let that happen to you. It is not that shaitan won. It is not that your enemy won. Your enemy won because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removed his protection. You know what he's saying? If I see that we are so much defeated and under the feet of everyone, my first question is, why did they do that to me? No. What happened? Why did Allah let that happen? Did I do something? What did I do to let this happen to me? You know when you have a kid, and like let's say there is a candle, and my son wants to put his hand in the flame, and what do? No, no, no. And he starts throwing a tantrum and crying, and I want to... Sometimes his dad will do what? What will you do? Say, okay, yes, go ahead. Put your hand. Go ahead, right? And he puts his hand and he cries and he gets burned. Of course, it's not fatal, but he cries. The first question in the head of this kid is the following. Is not why did the fire burn me? What made my dad, the one that loves me, look at me and allow me to do that? What must I have done that my dad reached a conclusion? You know what? This is what you need. Unfortunately, this is what you need to wake up. You need this. You had to get burned to wake up. How far have you went for the solution to be that type of a calamity? That's what Ibn al-Qayyim is saying, right? طيب, here. So let's go, inshallah. طيب, the situation in Europe. Europe in the time, as you know, Europe is many countries, right? And unlike Muslims, they're very different. You have the Germans, you have the French, you have like the people like in the Irish and the English, right? Europe was as divided. In that time, who was the strongest person in Europe? Which country? Who's the king? Who's like if I was to ask you, like in Europe, did they have one powerful ruler? Who would you guess it would be? Roman Empire. Actually, it's interesting, but no. The Roman Empire was very powerful, but the Roman Empire split, and we had something called the Eastern Roman Empire and Western Roman Empire. The Eastern Roman Empire was like, see this Byzantium, this purple thing here. This is what was left of the Roman Empire. They're Orthodox Christians. Orthodox Christians. They're still civilized, but they're not as powerful. Europe, most of Europe, they're Catholics. And they split out of the Roman Empire and fell into a very dark age. The Roman Empire, they had civilization, they have science, they have... Europe in that time, as we'll see today, was far from that. Europe was divided. It was outside. And now you have what? Orthodox Christians versus the Catholics. The Catholics, where is their center? Anybody knows? Italy. Where is the Pope? Right? The Pope is where, like here in Italy, Rome, right? So now you had two parts, the Byzantine Empire, very weak, and you had the Pope of Rome, right? The Catholics. The strongest power in Europe at that time, can you guess who it was? The Pope. The Pope was the strongest power ever. Why? Because according to, back then they were very serious. The Europeans were devout Catholics. Ignorant people, no science, but very devout. They took their faith very seriously. They believed that the Pope is divinely guided. Meaning what? If he says something, it's God speaking through him. So the power of the Pope can remove kings if he wants. He had such a power, and people really believed in him. So the strongest power in Europe was the Pope. Now go one more. So what happened? The situation in Europe, people were fighting, right? But number of things happened. The Muslims in Spain started to become weak and cities started to fall, right? Some say that the Ismailis of Egypt sent a letter to the Pope. Why? They were afraid from the Seljuks. So they wanted the Christians to come in between them and the Seljuks. So they enticed, it's a claim, I don't have proof for that. They enticed the Pope, why don't you send a crusade or send something, so that it was in their best interest. The Pope saw an opportunity. The Muslims are really weak. Spain is falling. The European countries are strong and powerful but fighting each other. So he asked, and this is a very famous speech he gave. He gave a historic speech in Clermont, France. He asked all the kings to come themselves, all the kings of Europe. And he delivered a very powerful speech. And this speech is very interesting, it's very tactical. In the beginning, he praised especially France, the Franks. You're the ones that stopped the Muslims in Spain. You're like, you're the servants of God. You have a bright history. Give them a big, pump them up. Second, he started telling them, sad news are coming from the East. And started painting Muslims as a barbaric nation, unclean race, came to power, and they are spilling the blood of the Christians. They are destroying all the churches. Your brothers in Jerusalem, your brothers in Palestine, the Christians are being slaughtered by the Muslims. And they are all crying for your help. The city of the Prince of Peace, Jerusalem, fell into the hands of those barbaric people. And he started showing and saying things, of course, all untrue. Christians were living in harmony with Muslims, as a matter of fact. But the people became very zealous. And then he started to added something of a economical twist here. He knows the leaders are also, what's the biggest motive for war? Money, as you all know today. Why do we invade Iraq? For democracy? Really? For weapons of mass destruction? I'm sorry for saying that, or for something else. We know that humans, in many leaders are always driven by money. So he made sure to tell them that the lands of the East are fertile. The lands of the East are very rich, very green, very big, and anybody who gets something, it's his. So he gave them a motivation of what? You want expansion, you want a lot of money, you want a lot of honey, you want a lot of gold and a lot of silver. If you go into that campaign, you can take whatever. It's yours. He added one more thing. Anybody who goes into this campaign is promised by the Pope to be completely forgiven and goes to heaven directly. Divine promise. Even if you had major sins punishable by law, if you go to this, you're good to go. Your kids, don't worry about them. The church will take care of them. I'm the Pope. I'm giving you like a decree. You're going. The reaction was very interesting. The people of the time in Europe were ignorant, but there was one good quality about them. They were really sincere and zealous about their faith. They were sincere people. So what happened? They were so motivated by this speech. They started crying. All the kings gave an oath. We're going to go ourselves. And the masses started, to gather, and preachers started to spread the message. One of those preachers, and it's very interesting. Why am I saying this? Because there is a lesson for us. Anybody knows Peter the Hermit? Peter the Hermit, he's not a scholar, but he's a powerful person in terms of what eloquency of speech. Known for his, he's a hermit, so very righteous, very pious. So he took the message of the Pope and led a campaign through Europe. A campaign of what? The Muslims and how the Christians are being defiled and what's happening to the Christians, and Jesus is calling, and the blood, and the city of the Prince of Peace, and Jerusalem, and how sometimes people preach the message of God with passion, right? And people were so attracted to this. And then he came with something. We will not wait for the kings. Come with me. Get your sword. Get your weapons. God is with us. God is on our side. If you stand for God, God will bring you victory. Don't worry about it. We will win. The forts in front of us will fall once we show them the... And he said, the best weapons, the more pure you are, the better it is. Who's the most purest of people that can stand for Christ? Who are the most cleanest among us? See how he's speaking, right? Who is it? The children. Children are clean. Children have no sins. Send your children. Send your children, because if your children, they're pure Christians, once they show, the miracles of God will happen. And the Muslims will fall. And we will take Jerusalem. And people believed it. And people started joining. I'm speaking about farmers, everybody with his sword, everybody with his axe, everybody. It was a big mob. And they started moving, and they now going for the Muslims on their way. If they encounter Jews, they kill them. Orthodox Christian, they burn them. Because they have to be pure. Very zealous. And ideology, you see what I'm saying? Because sometimes this disease can afflict Muslims too. Don't think this just happens to Christians. What is going on here? They have tawakkul ala Allah. You rely on God. Where is the means? You don't have an army. You're not trained. But God is with us. We will win. That's not tawakkul. It's not tawakkul. But the zealousy of the people, and you can guess what happened. They landed in Asia Minor. What do you think happened to that campaign? They got slaughtered. All the kids were taken, of course the Seljuks of the time said, okay, slavery. Great, and just took them and sold them in slavery. They killed the rest, and now the Seljuks got an impression. Those crusaders, those are like fanatics, they're crazy people. You see, so it left an impression towards the Muslims, what? Don't tell me a crusade again, those are like, they don't know what they're doing. Right? So that was the first, go ahead. That was the first crusade that landed towards the Muslims, right? And it gave a false sensation to the Muslims, right? That Christians are out of their mind, kind of, right? They don't know what they're doing. Go ahead. This is the speech of the Pope. You can find it online if you're interested, but and this is the kids. But little did they know, the real crusade was formed. And this was not a small crusade. The kings of Europe came. And they came with a massive force. Everybody that can join started joining. And I'm speaking, it's out of what? It's not out of, people were really zealous. You would see women, and as Salahuddin later was impressed, the women would sell everything. They would sell their land. Why? So that my husband and my son can go fight. They were really adamant about it. Out of what? Out of their belief in Jesus. They thought they're doing something good. They thought we're fighting barbarians. That the Muslims are infidels, and we are going to save the city of the Prince of Peace from the clutches of those infidel people. And this is very important for us to know that. Why? The encounter with the Muslims, the encounter of Salahuddin left those people very disturbed. What, can you guess why? They came with the assumption of what? We are good people, the Muslims are what? Infidels, barbaric, no civilization, animals. When they saw Salahuddin, what did they see? They actually got shocked, as we'll see. Got shocked by what? Civilization, morality, jurisprudence, science, morals, ethics, chivalry, pluralistic society. And then the question was like, but the church told us something different, And that caused a disturbance in the Christian mind that eventually, centuries later, led to the fall of the church. The encounter with the Muslims, and especially Salahuddin, really disturbed them, as you'll see. Not because of his sword, because of his chivalry, because of his character. Left them really We thought he's a barbarian. We thought he's an infidel. It turns out we're the infidels, as you'll see. Right? So, and again, I'm going to go a little bit, we have full details of their campaign, battles and everything. So today I'm going to share a little bit with you along the action line. And the main thing is I want you to focus on the performance of the Christians and how they were and what they did to the Muslims. This is really important. Why? So that you would appreciate what Salahuddin, how he treated them. You know Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, one of his biggest things is look how Mecca, people of Mecca treated him. And at the end of the day, when he wins and he enters Mecca, how did he treat them? And you look to that and say, Ashhadu annaka Rasulullah. Because it would have been fair. You oppressed me, I oppress you back. But to be able, like Yusuf alayhi salam, لا تثريب عليكم اليوم. What he did to his brothers, right? The display of magnanimity. We will not comprehend what Salahuddin did, his magnitude of magnanimity, till we understand what those people did. So they first landed. Their first encounter was the city of Nicaea. And when they landed, the ruler of Nicaea, okay, can you leave the questions to the end? The ruler of the city of Nicaea was out where fighting his Muslim, cousin. Usual. And news came to him, there is another crusade. They're coming towards Nicaea. He said, yeah, one of those crusades. Those crazy Christians, we've dealt with them before. Later. Till the crusade came around the city, started erecting siege towers and trebuchets, and equipment. And the people were terrified. This is a very organized army. They sent another message to him. This is pretty serious. This is a very strong army. You'd better come. He makes a deal with his enemy. Sorry, we'll fight later, but I have a problem in my town. So let's make a truce. We'll finish our business later. Let me go deal with those crazy Christians. He goes, and again, I'm going fast. He rides back to the city of Nicaea, and it said his heart he was terrified. It was not what he expected. It was not those kids with Peter the Hermit. It was a well-organized army with people in iron from head to toe. The Crusader Knights. With horses like tanks. Hundreds of thousands. Siege towers, trebuchets, and he was like, I can't even think to attack. So he ordered a small attack, of course got badly defeated, asked the city to surrender, and started running, spreading fear. Telling Muslims, my God, we don't know what's going on, Crusaders are coming, and started describing their strength. The Quran says, كلما جاءهم أمر من الأمن أو الخوف أذاعوا به. One thing we need to know. When a calamity strikes, when a disaster strikes, what do we do? What this guy did is what? He spread fear among the Muslims. Whenever something of fear and distress comes, let's go to social media. Let's tell everybody how terrible things. Do not broadcast fear. Don't do that. Don't shake the hearts of other people, telling them it's hopeless. And that's what he started spreading this message, right? And then he went to other rulers and said, look, listen, this is not about us, you're next. This is not about the city of Nicaea. Those are massive, they're coming for you. So what do you suggest? Let's have an alliance. Let's agree to come temporarily together. Let's prepare a trap for them. The Seljuk soldiers were known for one of their techniques. And again, you can study it in details, but this is not the place. Their archery. They were masters in archery. The bow and arrow. So they had two techniques. One is they would ride their horses, and the rate of shots. So typically, for example, the Crusader bow is big. It's massive, right? So you pull, you shoot, the arrow goes very fast. The Seljuks is smaller, but their idea was what? In the time you shoot one arrow, I shoot 4. Fast, like a machine gun, And they were masters of what? They ride their horses, and they would lean, and then they would come up and spray arrows on their opponents, right? And their horses were very agile. It's very effective. So their favorite attack was what? This bow and arrow. They had another technique which was very interesting. This is a contemporary scholar that said they had arrows that would fire for a long distance. How did they do it? It was very interesting. They had a big bow, and actually you lay on the ground. The person would lay on the ground, put his feet on the bow. Can you imagine it? And take the arrow and lean backward, flat, right? And raises his feet in the air. He uses his whole body and then shoots, and the arrow would go so far. So when it came to the arrows, they were really good. So they decided, let's use our advantage. So there is a valley. In Arabic, it's called Dor al-Yum. This is the place where it happened, right? And they set a trap for the Crusaders. They gathered their forces around the hills, right? And a lot of bow and arrows, right? And then they said, once they go into that narrow, we will just shower them, and then we'll attack, and then we'll finish them off. And they waited, and indeed, the first Crusader army showed. Huge army. And they went into this trap. They went into Dor al-Yum. And it seemed to be working. And Qilj Arslan was like, okay, the army is big, but I think it's manageable. There is a multiple of us, we can take care of them. And they ordered the bow and arrows like fire. And in the original half an hour, the Muslims caused so much damage. Those arrows were very effective. But one problem happened. They were not used to the Christian knights. All of a sudden, the Christians, very sluggish. You know the Christian crusader, right? Horse, iron fort. So they systematically got their horses, made like a square with their shields, right? And then all of a sudden, the arrows are not effective anymore. They kept shooting arrows, but the element of surprise is gone, and nothing is happening, and those people are not moving. They're not running away. They're staying where they're at. They're waiting. And then Qilj Arslan is like, what should we do now? Should we go into hand-and-hand combat with those knights? This big iron thing? Yes, no, yes, no. While they're speaking, according to our resources, a dust cloud appears on their east. They look, a huge Christian army is coming from the eastern side. And then the huge dust cloud coming from the west. Another Christian army. The army that they attacked was not the Christian army. It was the vanguard, Muqaddimah. They thought this is the army. This was just the vanguard. And the army is now coming from all sides. And now they are going to be surrounded. And what happened? Can you guess what happened? What do you think happened? There is one advantage left. We have one advantage. What is it? Our horses, the Arabian horse, light and fast. Every man for himself. Take the horses, run. What about the foot soldiers? Sorry. The foot soldiers got slaughtered. Major defeat for the Muslims. The Battle of Dor al-Yum. Christians won a major, they crushed the army. And the news started spreading. Those knights, terrible, terrifying. They crushed the Muslim army. Where is their next stop? Go on. Right? So here is again, and I don't want you to remember, the names are not very important. And again, if you go to our history books, we have detailed accounts. But I don't want us to dive into the details of it. I'll just give you a glimpse to just show you like the kind of what was our response. That's the important thing. So the major cities, you have Antioch. Then the area of Sham, the three cities that I want you to remember because they'll stay with us. Aleppo, Damascus, and Mosul. Those three cities are three different nations. Everybody has its ruler, right? And a very interesting situation happened. The background is very interesting. I'll say it quickly. You don't need to remember this. It's just interesting. City of Aleppo, the ruler dies. The two brothers, Ridwan comes to power. The first thing he does, he starts killing all his brothers. One of them escapes, the Qaq, goes to Damascus, right? Takes the city, right? And you have now a rivalry between the two brothers. Those two cities for the last 10 years are fighting, right? Antioch was caught in the middle. The leader of Antioch, and I won't give the names just to make it simple, was one time with Aleppo, the other time with Damascus, just switching allegiance. So those three cities were continuously bickering and fighting, right? One more thing to know, Ridwan, the guy in Aleppo, had the assassins with him. The assassins were really a powerful element in Aleppo at that point. They reached the courtyard and he used their services to assassinate people. So people were really terrified from him. As a matter of fact, history shows the leader of Antioch married his own daughter to Ridwan. You know why? But that didn't save him. They still fought, right? In any case, what's important for us? The Crusader army left Dor al-Yum and went for the big city of Antioch, and they laid siege, right? And I'm going again, this is 200 days of a siege, and we have the detailed account, but I'm going to go fast, right? So The leader of Antioch at this point wanted what? I cannot defeat this army by myself. I need the help of my neighbors. Who should I go to? And he decided to go to the guy in Damascus. He goes there, apologizes for attacking him the year before, and we need to, this is really what happened, right? And now, you know what, it's not only me, you see this army, if they take Antioch, guess what? You're next, kind of, so like, I need your help, and I promise you, and you know, and maybe after that, me and you will be against your brother, you know, all those kind of political, right? And he agrees, and he sends a big army from Damascus to help his brother. Interestingly, according again to our history books, the army on the way meets a small outpost of the Christian army. I think the number was something very feeble, like I think it was 3,000 knights or something, like 300, 3,000, something, a very small batch of knights. So what happened? The entire army of Damascus stopped. The attack? It's like, no. They look scary, fort of iron. Should we attack or not? Should we attack or not? And guess what happened? Those knights attacked the army of Damascus. And you know what the result was? Massive defeat for the entire army of Damascus on the hand of like 3,000 knights. And the army retreated and left, you know, the leader of Antioch alone, and that's it. We don't want anything to do with those knights anymore. I want you to see, like, why am I saying this? Why are we so easily defeated? Do you see the state of the soldiers? This is not the ruler. Something is wrong with the soldiers. They're running away. This is the key, right? The performance is very bad, right? Same story happened. So what did this guy do? Now, instead of going to go ahead. He goes to Aleppo. Apologizes for going to the Damascus first. Please, now your turn. Convinces Ridwan to help. He sends an army with him. But he was terrified that, you know, something bad will happen to him. He forced his army into a narrow valley, right? Like, you know, with the hills behind them so he doesn't get trapped. And again, what happens? A Crusader army shows. Now we have the army behind them. They attack the Muslims. This army could not run. Next day, this is what the history book says. The next day, in Antioch, the Muslims could hear the catapults, you know, the whistles of the catapults, and the Christians laughing. What's going on? They were not throwing stones. They were throwing the heads of the soldiers of the Muslim army of Aleppo. Psychological. This is the army that you think, here are the heads. And the city of Antioch, of course, fell into despair. Right? Again, there was a third attempt by the city of Al-Mosul, but I'm going to make it short. I'm not going to, again, you can, what happened is, like, quickly, the leader of Al-Mosul made an allegiance with both of Damascus and Aleppo. Let's fight together. He goes, and you know what happened in the battlefield? Damascus and Aleppo retreated and left him exposed, and he got defeated. Because they viewed him more dangerous than the Crusaders. If he wins, he'll become so powerful, so famous, the Crusaders are better for us than him. Which is like a very political move. It shows you the state of the Muslims. In any case, what happened next? Please go ahead. The city of Antioch eventually fell to the Crusaders. So what they did in the city of Antioch was something history records. Every man, woman, child killed. A huge massacre. They killed everybody. And that terrified the Muslims. Those Crusaders have no mercy. The next stop, and remember at that time, Muslims didn't know what on earth are those people doing. And that was actually very disturbing. There was no Muslim intelligence. A crusade like that land, and the Muslims had no idea at all, where are they going? Who's next? Right? And they were just guessing. And now everybody's terrified. Whose turn is it? Are they going to go for Baghdad? Are they going to go for Cairo? They don't know. So their next stop, go ahead. By the way, this is again something really interesting. When the city of Antioch fell, what do you think Egypt was doing? The Fatimites. They saw it as a golden opportunity. The Seljuks are busy fighting the Crusaders, right? So they send an army to attack the Muslim Seljuks in Palestine. It's a good time to attack them. And they took Jerusalem and some of the cities into their control. And then they sent a letter to the Crusaders saying, what? Congratulations. Why? We have a very good deal. We have Egypt and what's in it. You take Sham and what's in it. And we're good. we're both against the Seljuks. Let's make a treaty. The response of the Crusaders was one line. You see what it was? What about Jerusalem? You can see where their target is. Jerusalem is with you. And they started, okay, we'll negotiate. Right? But it shows you this was the state of the Ummah, unfortunately. Right? Okay, go ahead. Now, what happened next, and this is very important because, again, and I'm sorry that it's so gruesome this time, but this is the reality of what we faced before. And again, why am I saying this? Are we that bad today? Right? What happened next was something really terrifying. A small city by the name of Ma'arra on the way to Jerusalem. And the Crusaders went and they started laying siege. And the people of Ma'arra said, listen, it's a small city, what should we do? And then they sent to the Crusaders, we don't want, if we were to surrender the city, would you spare us? And the Crusaders said, of course, if you surrender the city to us, that's all what we want. You'll go free, you take your wealth with you, we don't care less. Deliver the city, and we will let you go. And the people of Ma'arra, they were terrified to fight. What did they do? They decided to surrender the city. What happened in the city of Ma'arra, by the accounts, not of the Muslim accounts. Those are the Christian letters that they wrote to their Pope. So the source for this is not Muslims. It's their own sources, where the letters they wrote to the Pope. It says what I'm going to say. They entered the city of Ma'arra. Every man, woman, and child killed. They betrayed. They left nobody. They killed everybody. But in the city of Ma'arra, something worse happened. Go to the next one. And this is very unfortunate. This is in their letters to their Pope, not by our resources. What do they say? In the city of Ma'arra, our knights boiled adult pagans in giant pots. They paled their children on spits of fire and they devoured them grilled. Cannibalism. They ate Muslims. The Crusader Knights, chivalry. This is history. So this is something like, can you imagine the psychological terror that befell the Muslims now? Those are inhumane, they eat people. Not only they're strong, not only they kill. What's this? Right? And we have poems by written about it, unfortunately, but they were eating people. And this is again not the Muslim account, this is their own account. So now the terror that befell the Muslim hearts. And again, why am I telling you this? I don't think we face this today. We have enemies, but I don't think it's that bad. They did not kill Muslims in a city and started devouring them. I mean, this is just incredibly bad. Now, but the one thing that happened now, they realized what's the goal of the Crusades. What's their goal? Jerusalem. Guess what was the next thing that happened? All the leaders, the leader of Damascus, Aleppo, Hims, Beirut, Saida, all those cities, what do you think they did? Offered guides, offered food, offered Bismillah, Fadal, Jerusalem. As long as I'm free on my seat, I'm good in Beirut, pass, take Jerusalem. So they aided the Christian army. They gave supplies, guides, some of them gave wine. While you're at it, if you want to party, Muslims, right? As long as it's not me, as long as I'm good on my chair, you can go ahead. This is not only in their time. And I'm going to ask you, what do you think will happen to those leaders? Do you think if the Crusaders take Jerusalem, they're going to spare everybody? We know better, right? But unfortunately, something happens to the minds of leaders, and that's what they thought.